Applicants who have attended international institutions must submit transcripts or certify attestation of study with certified English translations. Once translated, the original transcript and the certificate translation are to be sent to the graduate school admission office. Colleges should submit current transcript, followed by the transcript showing the aware of the particularly applicants who have studied. Applications who have attended international institutions must submit transcripts or certify the attendance of study with certified English translations. Once translated, the original transcript and the certified translations are to be sent to the graduate school admission office. College centers should submit current transcripts, followed by the final average of transcripts showing the award of the baccalaureate degree prior to matriculation, as is required and mentioned above. While costs are rising, audit fees are not, and tickets to regular shows are harder to move than ever. Many fans run to March. British and expectation blockbuster shows the particular attending by last minute creating cash flow problem for audience. While costs are rising, audience fees are not. While costs are rising, audience fees are not. While costs are rising, audience fees are not. While costs are rising, audience fees are not, and tickets or regular shows are harder to move than ever. Many fans aren't ready to return to the crowded March. Others are dealing with the cost of living increases, and with the expectation of prosperous shows. People who do buy tickets intending to buy them the last minute create a cash flow problem for others. It's logical for humans to feel anxious about artificial intelligence. After all, the news is constantly filling of jobs the children seem to outperform, but humans aren't yet headed for our replacement, and the software from school AI and sense entirety. They're always elevated, motivated for us for good. It's logical for humans to view answers. It's logical to view answers. It's logical for humans to view answers about artificial intelligence. After all, the news is constantly reeling of job after that job at which the technology seems to outperform us. But humans aren't yet headed for all our replacements. And if you do suffer from so-called AI anxiety, there are ways to elevate your fears and even reframe them into the motivating force for good. So the author Samuel Shine, the muscles science and materials, says this small class is cheaper than others and uses minimal power, for example, than something like curling iron, and since flexible and foldable, this is useful in like camouflage uniform to which, for example, to green and brown to white and gray. Key to the ray to the order Samuel Shine to the author. So the author Samuel Shine, a material scientist, says this more class is cheaper than others and uses minimal power, much less, for example, than something like cooling iron. Then, since flexible and foldable, he says it could even be used for things like camouflage uniforms to which, for example, from green and brown and white and red. Don't miss the beginning of lectures, since it is very often most valuable for instance, because it reveals previous lectures for analyze objects and lecture structure. If you easily get distracted by other students, sit near the front. Don't miss the beginning of lecture since it is very often most valuable. For instance, because the reviews previous lectures or structure are easily distracted by it. Don't miss the beginning of lecture. Don't miss the beginning of the lecture, since it is very often most valuable for instance, because it reviews previous lectures or outlines objects and lecture structure. If you easily get distracted by other students, sit near the front. People seeking acute teacher's plan often after 3 years, a donor organ become available, and many die before ever receiving one. Sinus transplantation, in which organs from the one species related in order could alleviate to organ shortage and bridging unions of evolutionary diversions between two species and toward so for this key organ association has largely impractical. People seeking a kidney transplant People seeking a strategic membrane often People seeking a kidney transplant often have to wait years for a donor organ to become available, and many die before ever receiving one. Such a transplantation, in which organs from the species are transplanted into another, could alleviate the organ shortage, but bridging millions of years of evolutionary divergence between two species. In a tall order, so for the case, organ transplantation was largely impractical. Eastern North Pacific gray whales are one of the few populations of large whales that have recovered to what may be similar number that is at this point to commercial whaling. As the population has approached levels close to what their Arctic feeding areas can support, they have likely become more sensitive to environmental conditions due to competition for limited resources. Eastern North Pacific gray whales. Eastern North Pacific gray whales are one of the few populations of large whales that have recovered to what may be similar numbers that existed prior to commercial whaling. As the population has approached levels close to what their Arctic feeding areas can support, they have likely become more sensitive to environmental conditions due to competition for limited resources.
The undergraduate students are taught a rigorous course in our psychology department.
The undergraduate students are taught to be a department.
The development is mainly included in Chapter 9.
The development is mainly included in Chapter 9.
Compiling a bibliography can present a major challenge for some students.
Compiling the bibliography may be a major challenge for the student.
The website has probably the most attractive designs and layouts.
The website maybe have the most attractive design layout.
Absolutely. Scientific advancement is generally viewed as beneficial for society.
Absolutely, scientists or society.
There's been far more research on conventional crime and far more data is available.
There are far more research and criminal crime and far more available.
The new timetable will be posted on the website before classes start.
The new timetable will be posted in the website before the last start.
The media's coverage of the election has been skewed from the very beginning.
The media collection will be skewed for the collection.
Soil erosion can be caused by increasing rainfall and changes in plant growth.
Causes may be caused by the rainfall and changes in the weather.
I spend my time really studying human beings.
I spend my time really studying in human being. Trading goods, imports, cedar oil timber from Nubia, copper, ancient Egypt, export lion tools, base beer, weapon oil from the countries of import hours. The picture shows the trading goods, the process of trading goods including imports and exports. First, we can notice that it begins with the cedar oil timber from some nation. Next transition to the copper cement with the stone gold from Nubia, and then it's changed to global ivory, cell exotic animals, and horses, fruit, honey, post copper, and finally they transition to the ancient Egypt, and finally they end with the exports and linen to embrace beer weapons oil. In conclusion, there is a several steps of this process to create a trading goods process. Joe's fruit stand sales. Average sales per day. Higher oranges, 35.8%, 7.5% apples, oranges, bananas, grapes, and limes. The bar chart shows the Joe's fruit stand sales measured in average sales per day, including apples, bananas, oranges, grapes, and limes. First, we should notice that oranges is the highest number of 37.5%, and apples hit the lowest number of 7.5%. Aside from that, the chart also lists other figures such as bananas, grapes, limes at the 19.3%. 25.9% and 9.5%. In conclusion, there is a big gap between oranges and apples in the Joe's fruit stand sales. Employment and unemployment rate. Measuring percent and millions. Measuring percent million. January 2003 to January 2008. 2008. Employment. The line chart shows the employment and unemployment rate measured in percent and millions from January 2003 to January 2008. First of all, we can notice that the employment hit a highest number of about more than 17 and hit the lowest number of about 15.5, and the unemployment rate hit the highest number about nearly 8%, and hit the lowest about less than 6%. In conclusion, there was a upward trend in employment and the downward trend in the unemployment rate. Income by age and gender in the UK. Gender both female, male. Median income pre-tax. Median income pre-tax. It is pound, right? Pound. Income by age. The line chart shows the income by age and gender in the UK, measuring the median income pre-tax pound. First of all, we can notice that the gender has the highest number of about nearly 30,000 in the age group of about 45 to 49. Aside from that, the chart lists other figures of female and male. In conclusion, there is a fluctuation in income by age and gender in the UK.
But when we move into working with communities, we have to recognise that the communities have to be the authority in their language. And actually, a woman in the class I'm teaching at Sydney at the moment, a Korean woman, expressed this very nicely, although she was talking about something else. She was distinguishing expertise from authority. And certainly linguists, because of our training, we do have expertise in certain very narrow areas of language. but we don't have the authority over what to do with that knowledge or what to do with other knowledge that the community produces. And I guess for me the bottom line is languages are lost because of the dominance of one people over another, and that's not rocket science. It's not hard to work that out. But then what that means is, if in working with language revival we continue to hold the authority, we actually haven't done anything towards undoing how languages are lost in the first place. So in a sense, the languages are still lost if the authority is still lost.
According to the lecturer, the topic is about community. First, they mentioned that the circle is very narrow of languages when communicating. Then they argue about why need dominance to one portion than another. After that, they say about why the languages have to know in person. And then finally, they say that we need to know a lot of information when we have to know the language. And after that, they mention about how languages work in the third place.
I'm just going to take on where Stafford left off. The hormone I want to talk to you about is called melatonin, and it's synthesized in the pineal gland, which is a very small, it's the size of a pea in your brain. Descartes called it the seat of the soul, and it is where melatonin is made. Is this working? And it has a rhythm as well. And in a sense, it's the opposite of cortisol. It peaks at night. We call it the darkness hormone. In every species that we've studied, melatonin occurs at night, and it's a hormone that prepares you for the things that your species does at night. So of course in humans we sleep, but animals like rodents, they're awake. So it's a hormone that is related to darkness behavior.
According to the lecturer, the topic is about the melatonin hormone. First of all, they specify that the hormone is released from the brain, and after that, they mention about the melatonin is made from the dark hormone, and it's called a darkest hormone. And after that, they say that is affect to our behavior at night. And finally, they say that the hormone make we work at night and sleep at the morning, like other animals.
Which word belongs to insects, mantis or lettuce?
Insects.
What kind of drugs are used for killing bacteria?
Antibacterial.
If a figure is hexagonal, how many sides does it have?
4.
How do we call the people who work in companies?
Officer.
What clothing do people wear, such as students or nurses, to show that they belong to the same organizations?
Uniform.
Which one is easier to recycle? Plastic or paper?
Plastic. Paper. Yeah. I see. Remove it. Detrimental or detrimental effects. Ideal oil, oil, even but the mouth is bigger one is that one standard example. One standard example. That stems from the fact that meditation even is beautiful, indisputable, sign, individual, there are many open animal stands. However, another pivotal aspects of this issue is that needed this last but not least, oh no, the primary original people get more knowledge, but also broaden broad broad social relationship international to student encourage deserving or focusing, learning on one on languages can learn can student traditional living student are choosing to learn Is there of help for different reasons for different people? And with these meanings of help also showing them in daily class. First of all, there is a map for the snapping. There's no method for the snap, even though it's now still today. This is the update is almost surprisingly when there is a better job. How does the t-shirt originate? So you actually want to
Did Benjamin Franklin really propose that a turkey rather than an eagle should be the national symbol on the Great Seal of the United States? Not exactly. In a letter to his daughter, dated January 26, Did Benjamin Franklin really propose that a turkey rather than an eagle should be the national symbol on the Great Seal of the United States? Not exactly. In a letter to his daughter, dated January 26, 1784, Benjamin Franklin noted that the proposed drawing of the bald eagle for the Great Seal looked more like a turkey. He went on to say that perhaps the illustration was fitting, since a turkey is a more respectable bird than a bald eagle. He said that though a turkey is a bit vain and silly, it is also a native species with great courage who would protect its territory from invaders. He went on to criticize the eagle, saying that these birds were immoral cowards that liked to steal. While Benjamin Franklin's letter to his daughter suggests he had reservations about the symbolism of the eagle, it is a myth to say that this founding father truly felt the turkey ought to be America's national bird.
succeeding once you're here at university obviously has always been people's aim, but the stakes are so high now with the competition that there is, but also with the amount of money that people are going to be paying to come to university. Presumably there's a lot more pressure on you to make sure that students, once they're here, succeed.
The introduction of tuition fees puts a massive pressure on the students because they're, as you say, they're investing lots of money, they're investing their time, but also as more and more people do degrees, the importance of getting a good degree becomes greater. You know, it's not enough just to have a degree. That doesn't make you stand out above the crowd anymore. And so it's not so much about us being under pressure, the students are under huge pressure to get as much as they can out of their time. The transition from school to university is quite a large transition. It's a different type of learning. So they're going from a situation where they have small classes, teachers that have known them for years, quite a prescriptive curriculum where you need to know this, 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 and if you answer a question by saying this, this, and this, you'll get all the marks, to a much more fluid, much more independent style of learning where there's not such a set curriculum. It's more about, well, what do you think you need to know in order to answer a question that you're set? There's a massive academic transition.
And the flow of students, it's what you need, is it? You get plenty coming. Where I get I can see them coming from all over the world, in fact, to Australian vet schools, which are famous. So,
they come from everywhere. It's one of the courses that is always fully subscribed. We always have to turn people away. We have far more applications than places. We've, in recent years, started taking a lot of international students, and that was a decision by the faculty. We increased the number of places that were available. So we could still take the same number of local students, but we took a lot of internationals as well. And they do come from all over the world. They'll come from the Scandinavian countries. We have them from Africa occasionally. We have quite a few who come from the UK. And more recently, we've been getting them from North America because we got, at least the University of Sydney got accredited with the American Veterinary Medical Association. So we graduate students who are on a par with the students from the North American schools.
I think that's not going to be such a viable option for Cerberus, but that may be the way that they're going to approach it. Private equity, of course, is supposed to have the advantage of taking management out of the spotlight of quarterly profits and industry analysts, and prying shareholder eyes, and that, hypothetically, gives them a chance to take slower, more patient routes to doing something to turn a company around. I would hope, and I have some, I guess, optimism that some of the Cerberus team will have some creativity and imagination. President Trump has reluctantly signed into law a congressional bill imposing sanctions on Russia over its policy in Ukraine and alleged meddling in last year's U.S. presidential election. Afterwards, he called the legislation seriously flawed, saying it encroached on his powers to negotiate foreign policy and hurt the interests of European allies. The company that provided the Venezuelan voting system for the controversial Constituent Assembly elections says the turnout figure was inflated by at least 1 million. The Speaker of the opposition-controlled National Assembly called on prosecutors to open a criminal investigation immediately.
It is about 100 years since that great Canadian-born physician, Sir William Osler, Regius Professor of Medicine in Oxford, complained about the increasing influence of the pharmaceutical industry on the medical profession. If he knew how this influence had increased since then, he would be turning in his grave at the way the industry now dominates doctors' prescribing habits. It does this not only by direct and indirect pressure on the doctors themselves, but also by encouraging the public to ask for scripts and to demand that governments provide the money.
Do you drink enough water? This is our water intake. The old theory was that we were supposed to drink 8 cups of water, but that's an old wives' tale. If we drink 4 cups of water and take 4 cups of water in food, we're eating lettuce, we eat pasta, we eat soup, we eat a cup of coffee, some lattes, we have all kinds of fluid inside our food. So 4 cups of liquid, 4 cups of water in the food, we generate about 1.5 cups of water just from metabolism. If you remember way back to the metabolism lecture, breakdown of carbohydrate yields carbon dioxide, energy, and water. Breakdown of protein yields carbon dioxide, energy, water, and nitrogen. Breakdown of every nutrient yields water. That's what this water is. So that's part of the water balance. So our intake is equivalent to approximately 10 cups.
We can check these models now because we've had a couple of 100 years of rapid increase of greenhouse gases and other changes too, it's true. And this is the latest graph I could find that includes 2005, the rightmost point at the top here. This is the temperature of the whole Earth, mean temperature from 1880 up to 2005, with a Fahrenheit scale for the overall range shown on the left here. It's a couple of degrees or a bit less than that. And you'll notice it has a very particular pattern of an upward step in the early 20th centuries, and a plateau or decline in the mid-20th century, and then accelerating increase over the last 3 decades.
Okay, class, today I'm going to tell you about one of Picasso's greatest masterpieces, Guernica. As you know, Guernica is also the name of a Basque town. In order to understand this picture, we need to go over some of the historical background of this town. The Basque town is a city located in northern Spain. During the Spanish Civil War, the German Air Force bombed the city. It was a massive aerial bombardment of a civilian population. It happened since the Nazis were helping Spain's dictator Francisco Franco. Hundreds of civilians were killed in the raid. It shocked the world, and this prompted Picasso to begin painting. He completed it in less than 2 months and hung it in the Spanish Pavilion at the Paris International Exposition of 1937. The painting became a timely and predictive vision of the Second World War. There is a complexity of symbolism in the painting. It does not portray the event directly. Instead, Picasso used imagery such as suffering people, animals, and buildings wrenched by the violence. It certainly shows the chaos of carpet bombing. We can feel the inhumanity, brutality, and hopelessness of war from it. Picasso really expressed his outrage very well with this monumental painting. People say Guernica is the last great historical painting. It is now recognized as an international icon for peace. You can also see a tapestry copy of it displayed on the wall of the United Nations building in New York City. It is often described as the most important work of art in the 20th century, but its meaning is still beyond the understanding even of some of the most well-known scholars.
This is a slogan or a phrase. It's still very much a part of the company today. And it's something that we began adopting when we wanted very much to change the culture from one that was more bureaucratic to one with a real sense of accountability. You know, when you think about a small store and you encounter the person that owns that store, you have a much different experience and encounter than when you're dealing with a temporary hired clerk. That sense of ownership that comes from true ownership is a very real and different behavior that we all recognize and we all appreciate. Run it like you own it. Spend it like it was your own money, not somebody else's or somebody else's enterprise, whenever you're in charge of something, anything, anywhere, any group. If you adopt that ownership mindset and mentality, it serves you well. We brought the Eden project in on time and on budget and have since invested £130 million. I wanted to run a place that had the values of sustainability. We do fantastic local sourcing. 90% of everything we consume at Eden is locally sourced. Our waste strategy is highly regarded, waste neutral. It's a lot easier than people say. But ultimately, I wanted to see how we could answer the question, what does a great place to work feel like? Our social enterprise at Eden cost £130 million and has already put £800 million back into the Cornish economy, which is more than double the entire money that has come from Europe for the whole of the Southwest. So to think of social enterprises as being piddly little things that you have to talk about in hushed library tones is... We're going to be talking about climate change and disease dynamics. Climate is changing. It's getting warmer, wetter in some areas. We're going to focus on vector-transmitted pathogens. Those are diseases transmitted by insects. Principally, we'll be looking at malaria, but everything we say will also apply to things like dengue fever, sleeping sickness, all against the background that each day on the order of 3,000 people die in Africa from insect-transmitted diseases such as malaria. We need to understand better how the dynamics of these diseases depend on temperature. Temperature is going to change, but also the variability in temperature is going to change. And understanding that is a problem that requires both ecological field studies, physiological studies of insects infected with malaria in the lab, and mathematics.
As you've probably heard, the US is in the midst of an obesity epidemic. Americans just keep getting fatter and fatter. But the bad news doesn't end there. Because in today's issue of the New England Journal of Medicine, scientists from Harvard and the University of California in San Diego report that obesity is actually contagious. And it seems you catch it from your friends. After analyzing 32 years' worth of data from more than 12,000 individuals, the researchers found that thin people tend to cluster with thin people, and not just for warmth. And that people with more mass tend to gravitate toward one another, too. But it's not that folks seek friends with a similar physique. Or that people who pack on the pounds all frequent the same fast food franchises or avoid the same gyms. What the scientists think is happening is that as those around you start plumping out, you come to think that being a bit hefty isn't such a bad thing. Then as you become larger, so do your friends. And your friends' friends. And their friends as well. The good news is that losing weight should also make your friends lighter. So order the salad and skip dessert. Believe me, your friends will be glad you did.
When the European Economic Community was established in 1957, its aim was, in broad terms, to move towards closer political and economic cooperation. Today, the much larger European Union has a far-reaching influence on many aspects of our lives, from the conditions we work under, to the safety standards we must adhere to, and the environment in which we live. In order to achieve the free flow of goods and services, workers and capital between the member countries, they needed to establish mutual policies in areas as diverse as agriculture, transport, and working conditions. When they had agreed on these policies, they became law. Now, though, the EU is concerned with a far wider range of issues.
He finally chose mathematics instead of physics. They are drafting a final report on the study of foreign trade.